Hi class, welcome to week number 4. We're going to be getting into community organizing and community practice this week. And also you have an assignment due on Sunday. In the KU Toolbox, they define community organizing as the process by which people come together to identify common problems or goals, mobilize resources, and in other ways, develop and implement strategies for reaching the objectives they want to accomplish. This involves not only identifying community needs and possible solutions, as we discussed last week, but developing a clear picture of 1. Who holds the power that impacts your identified issue, 2. Who and how decisions are made, and 3. How using what strategies could power be shifted to most effectively influence decision-making ability to get the results you want or those that you can accept. I really encourage you to look at that reading and to review the different types of power shifting strategies that they outline. There's a lot of really good material there. One of the supplemental readings this week provided a great list of organizing practices that show the strategic and human side of organizing. I'd like to use these to share a case example of an organization called Baltimore Block here in Baltimore, Maryland. They are a grassroots collective of friends, families, and neighborhoods. Basically, they are a youth-led group that has been a key player in pressuring the police department and city government to make changes regarding police use of force in the urban community here in Baltimore. Obviously, everyone has heard of the uprising that followed the death of Freddie Gray last year. But the important local context for organizing has actually been a longer history involving multiple cases where unarmed black men have been killed by the police, where there has been little or no accountability for that. So in the first 2 examples of this organizing strategy listed here on your screen, you see that it says plan ahead in order to attend to both process and product. And planning is a complex socio-political as well as technical process. So that means that the process of planning and action is as important. The process of leadership within an organization, the process to develop who has leadership and how it's exhibited is as important as the product itself. And Baltimore Block has really tried to implement those practices in their organizing strategies. They provided a platform for some extremely articulate young organizers to develop a set of demands for the police and City Hall regarding use of force policies and the handling of protesters in the city. Part of their process, though, has been on insisting on the leadership of historically underrepresented voices in the leadership of the organization and in who's representing the organization, who is speaking publicly on behalf of the organization, who runs meetings, who facilitates the process, and who makes decisions. All of those things are a reflection of the power that they seek within the larger community. They continually identify key allies within public administration as well as those who have influence in the community who support them. So they're both organizing in the community and also within the governmental structures that they're trying to advocate to change. So they're identifying allies in City Hall, in the police department who can help them mobilize the power that they need within the institutions. But then they're also utilizing power of media in the community, pastors, people from the church community, people from local social service organizations that also do organizing in the community that can be allies for them. They use documentation of their public meetings and the shared drafts of all of their demands as part of their tools. So they're sharing the work that's going back and forth between the public officials and their organizers and representatives in order to demonstrate the work that's being done and help that be a transparent process. They hold specific elected and appointed officials accountable for demonstrating concrete commitment to change. They've engaged in a series of working group meetings to craft acceptable compromises. They recognize that they have a set of principles that they will hold the elected officials accountable to, but they also recognize that sometimes there are areas where when they meet resistance and they will need to compromise certain points. And all of those areas of compromise are generally predetermined, like where can we fall back on if this doesn't work out. When they're speaking about their issues publicly, they define them from top to bottom as though no one knows anything about the issues. They offer the historical context for their work. They don't generally tie it to just one specific event, like this is just about Freddie Gray or this is just about police brutality, but rather they tie it to a larger context that has led up to this moment of these organizers in this time and place needing to put pressure on these officials in order to make change now, but it's always rooted in a longer context. And when the officials last year, for example, went back on their promises regarding the agreements that they would make about use of force and about treatment of protesters in Baltimore City, they staged a sit-in at City Hall until the mayor met with them and used social media, tweeting, Facebook, Tumblr, in order to broadcast their experience and broadcast their demands and the failures of the elected representatives to meet with them in order to demonstrate their struggle and also their strategy. And they continually escalate when necessary, as the sit-in demonstrates and also other demonstrations that they've had here in the city. So I think this is a good example of a group that is seeking to mobilize different kinds of power in order to make lasting change and are using some pretty classic organizing strategies, but also in a new way, right? So they're looking at ways now in this current context that classic organizing techniques can be utilized and also used by groups that maybe haven't always used them, such as this group of young people here in Baltimore. So I just want to quickly highlight community practice models just in case anyone was a little confused about this in the discussion forum prompts. This is not an exhaustive list. I just wanted to pull some from the readings that could be examples of community practice models that you all can utilize. I also want to highlight the role of practitioners in the process of community practice. And especially since the discussions talk about selecting a community practice model, I just want to highlight this portion where it talks about almost all community practice models call for flexibility and adaptability to local conditions, resources, problems, and actors. Practitioners are expected to mobilize and convene communities rather than focus only on decision making. So again, they're talking about the process of community organizing is as important as the decisions or solutions or product that you will get to. They have the responsibility to build wide forums that enable citizens and other stakeholders to work together. So really what this is saying is that practice in communities is truly rooted in the belief that people and the communities of which they're a part are capable of self-determination, and that the role of a social work practitioner is in facilitating and helping mold and shape and guide, but creating the space where people are able to make decisions about things that affect them.